Okay, so for those who don't know me, I'm Raquel. I'm the communications manager at Ecsite, the European Networks for Science Centers and Museums. I'm the comms team manager since January, but I've been with the team for like 5 years already. Ursula, what about you?
So my name is Ursula. I'm an all-round designer, what you would describe my function. I like to think about concept and communicate, make things look beautiful, but not for the sake of beauty, but for the sake of clear communication. I know a lot about tools and technologies, and I guess this is why I was invited to participate in this event as a technical support.
And I'm Julie. I'm a freelance facilitator, consultant, helping groups move along creative processes of various kinds, including exhibitions, but also online events. And I'm an ex-colleague of Raquel's, actually. I worked for the European Network of Science Centers and Museums until end of January, so I think some of you might still know me from this function. And Ecsite called me back in April or May when they decided that they would move their annual conference online. So this is how I got involved. A few roles for today. We're going to ask you to keep your microphones off unless you're asking a question, because there's quite a few of us right now. For your camera, you decide. If you're tired, you've had too many Zoom meetings already, keep it off. If you want to give us a little bit of a feeling that we have an audience, keep it on so we can see from your facial expression if you're still following what we are saying. So choice is up to you. You will best enjoy this if you're in speakers mode rather than gallery mode. And maybe something about asking questions. So the way to ask questions is to drop them in the chat. One of us will always keep an eye on the chat, and you will see that we will pose for questions at least twice during the meeting. If you wanted to raise your hand, you can use the little functionality that you will find if you click on participants, and then next to your name, you can see that you can raise your hand. But hopefully by dropping your questions in the chat, you won't really need it. I think that's all for the technical. Now, in order to get to know who you are even a little bit better, we're going to launch two very quick questions in the poll. First, we'd like to know how much experience you have with online conferences, organizing them. So I'm going to open a vote right now, which you should see pop up on your screen. So please answer this question in your own time. Okay, the last few answers. It looks like most of you have answered, I think. So let's share the results. So I can see that a good large fraction of our audience is planning a conference, an online conference currently, or looking into it, which is probably why they're here today in this meetup, and that 3 people have already organized one or several, and 9 people don't have any experience in organizing online conferences yet, I guess. So let me ask you a second question, which is, have you seen any of the events that Raquel, Ursula, and or myself were involved in planning this season? I think quite a few of you are probably there because of that, maybe not everyone. It's good for us to know how much background we will give you when we are explaining what these days were like. Okay, the answers are still coming in. It seems to be quite stable, so let me share the results. So we can see that we have 6 people in our audience who've not seen any of the events. So ladies will have to be quite explicit on what they were. And then everyone else has seen a webinar or the Ecsite Day or the Ecsite Business Day that we will tell the story of in a minute. So those who haven't, don't worry, we will get there. Great, so I think we have quite a good view of who is in the audience now. And we can go into our practice share. So it's mostly going to be us talking, because we think it's why you are here today, with a little bit of interaction from time to time. So this is not a massive participatory workshop like we might also be organizing at some in other circumstances, but I think the format today calls for a more unidirectional information flow. So we'll do a first bit of presentation, maybe 10-15 minutes, then have a first round of Q&A, a second part of the presentation, and there will be even more time for Q&A at the end. And I think I can now hand over to Raquel, who's going to start presenting, and Ursula, who will load the presentation from her screen. Raquel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So for those of you who don't know Ecsite, we are the European Network of Science Engagement. We are best known for organizing the largest professional science communication conference in Europe, the Ecsite Conference. This is our annual gathering, famous for its out-of-the-box session formats, tight family spirit, and unmissable social events. And about 1,200 participants from over 55 countries join us each year at a different European country to get inspired and connect with international peers. However, Ecsite is much more than its conference, and we represent science engagement at European level. We shape and spread best practices through our publications like spokes, awards, and we take part in several European projects and more. So next slide. For Ecsite, it was a must to support our members and close community during the pandemic. Ursula, if you don't mind. Ursula is having trouble. So I will continue. For Ecsite, it was a must to support our members during the pandemic, and more than ever, Ecsite had to be the platform for sharing practices, inspiration, and collaboration. We obviously couldn't hold the Ecsite conference in Ljubljana, which would have happened 2 weeks ago. So it was a really hard time for us. It takes years to organize the Ecsite conference. It's our flagship event. It took me quite some time to fully interiorize this, but we weren't canceling everything we had worked for. We had an engaged, next slide please. We had an engaged and creative conference program committee ready to dedicate time and energy. We had a pool of exciting sessions with fearless organizers who took on the challenge to move them online. We had a close network of partners who we actively reached out and asked how could Ecsite best serve them. And we had an agile and creative team at the Ecsite office who is empowered to drive and support change. Now we just needed a plan and online platform. Ursula, on to you.
Ursula, you need to unmute yourself. You're now very enthusiastically miming things.
Okay, I'm sorry. Am I unmuted now? I am, right? Okay, so we gave you a little demonstration how things can go wrong with sharing slides. I will try to clarify what are the technical aspects of an online event. And the larger the event gets, the more things can go wrong. What you saw just now was me clicking several times next slide, and then the system not forwarding. So the delay is one of the things that we always experience. Let me see if this is gonna now work. Okay. Therefore, it is really good to understand what is the infrastructure that enables this type of events, because if we understand the infrastructure, then we will also be able to choose the right platform for our needs. Okay, so what we have is several sources that the platform works on and then spits it out to our audience, right? And what happens is that we have some live sources, which are camera or screen grab, but we can also have pre-recorded sources such as a mounted video. And when the platform, of course, has to digest that and send it out to multiple streams and have to enable the engagement of the users. Engagement is, of course, one of the most important things. This is why we come to live events rather than watch YouTube videos or read articles. Now, the challenge is that this has to happen simultaneously. So when you ask a question, you have to get an answer immediately. When Raquel says click next slide, it has to happen immediately. Now, this is technically quite a challenging thing, and the more there are sources involved coming into the platform, the more difficult for the platform it is, of course, to work that through. And this is something which we have to keep in mind. So when we are planning the event and our engagement activities around it, we can also look, we're going to have a platform that's going to share the streams itself, but we can use some external tools. The more external tools we use, the more we will have to manage. So the higher the human resources we will need on one hand. On the other hand, there might be time delays that can be so crucial that some things just will not work. So you have to understand that when we are talking about live events, it's not necessarily completely live. There is always a little delay in there. Okay, we have to think which features we need, so we will be able to take a really good decision on what platform we use. The first is, of course, payment. Is our event going to be a paid event or not? Because we need certain features related to that. We most probably do want to have some sort of a registration, if for nothing else, for two reasons. Because when we make promotion for our event, we want to understand whether our promotion is working, so people actually are subscribing to our event, so we want to track that. And of course, we want to create insight. We want to know where our attendees are coming from, so maybe we can make some last-minute adjustments. We want to make sure, if of course we need that our platform will be able to send people reminders about upcoming session, and also at the end collect feedback. Now, important thing to decide is also whether we are fine with having an unbranded experience or we want to have complete white label. The difference is when you receive an email from the event organizer that the next session is starting, will this email come from the event organizer or it will come from the platform, such as Crowdcast? For some events, this is not important. For certain events, this is extremely important. And this is also influences the pricing eventually a lot. So all these features are something that you can have within the platform already, but if you have your own structure, infrastructure, such as website or so, you might not need it. For example, for promotion, you might anyway choose to promote your own event page with program and so on related. The second set of features is the features that we will need during the event itself. The first, which I a little bit explained in the beginning, is the scale. So the amount of seats is something that is also very largely defines the price of the platform, because this is how many streams they have to send out. Usually, if it would happen that we have a lot of attendees, we could still upgrade the plan, but there are certain platforms that might not have a possibility to upgrade it, so we have to be careful about that. What is more determining is the amount of streams, and this is how many input streams we can share at the same time. Imagine, for example, Zoom right now, we could have, I think we are something over 30 speakers. We could have 30 cameras streaming into this meeting. But there are certain platforms that have huge scalability on the output side, so they can broadcast to thousands of people, but they can only broadcast 4 streams at a time. So they're limited. There's always like this sort of balance between one or the other. Then what we need to think about is our event going to be a continuous event? That means that we will take our audience from 10 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock in the evening, from one piece of content to another. There is technically a huge difference whether we just send them links to different Zoom rooms and they will have to go from one room to another themselves, or we actually pull them from one, let's say, time slot to another. What we also have to think about is whether we will have pre-recorded content in video format. I think by now everybody experienced that screen sharing video is not a good idea, especially not if you're organizing a professional event. So you have to think how you're gonna host that. when you're thinking about features like that, I think it's also good to consider, is this pre-recorded video going to contribute to the, to the content of my conference? So if it's a pre-recorded video of just somebody talking, it might not be worthwhile, but it's really heavily mounted video of a place or something else, of course it's irreplaceable. Then another important feature is, does the platform enable parallel sessions? That means that two things can happen at the same time. And what you see more and more now happening is that the event organizer actually set up a sort of a TV live studio where part of the content broadcasts from there. In the matter of engagement, I put in bold things which are maybe not so self-explanatory. The rest of them almost any platform has. So chat and questions and polls, almost any platform now has, but the whiteboard and one-on-one meeting is something they do not have. So if you plan as part of the event to have some sort of a workshop type of experience where your users will need to use whiteboard, then it is of course good to have a platform that enables that. And then the last is whether during the event, do you want to extend your reach by broadcasting to other platforms such as YouTube, Facebook, or others. The pro for that is that, of course, instantly you will broaden your reach. More people will see your event. The con is that people will interact in different platforms and it will not be centralized. So if the purpose of your event is community building, really interaction with your audience, then this is not so important. If it's just purely reach, then of course you should think about that as well. You should not forget that you will have to onboard speakers, that the features that you're selecting are not only for you and your team and your technical equipment of your team, but also all the speakers. So especially if you have a lot of speakers and they are not from very tech environment, make sure that their onboarding experience is easy and that you have a good green room environment when they can learn how to operate and that they feel comfortable during their presentation. Of course, the features after event are also extremely important. So you have to do analytics, that you understand what was the attendance, that you can learn from your event so that you see which was the engaging content where people stayed and where was maybe the content that people dropped off. So what was the engagement, and if possible that you can collect feedback from the attendees after the event, maybe a week after, when they will give you their all over impression of their experience. It is also very handy if you have some, let's say the first short-term event archive, when people who are maybe just a day late or even a couple of hours late, they can rewatch the sessions. But probably it is a good idea that you have access to good recordings, so you can organize your selected archive in any of the channels that you use, YouTube, email, whatever. And I think it is good to think about already when you are creating sessions that this will be useful content, which you will be able to reuse later on, and how will you do that? And of course, this ties into the strategy of your organization. Now, of course, how to make the choice is first to decide what type of event you are making. Virtual conference, I wrote here virtual conference versus webinars versus online workshops and online meetings. So virtual conference would be something where you have really multiple type of content coming together, and you need the most diversified platform to support that. While webinars are more like what we have now, it's more one direction. When you have online workshop, it is really important that the streaming is good quality, also from participant side back to the, let's say, back to the platform, so that you can actually work together, that you have whiteboard and similar tools. And yeah, you know, for online meetings is not so much relevant. What you also have to ask yourself, is this what I'm gonna do once? Or is my strategy that, like in Ecsite case, are we creating some events that are running before? What will be the frequency and the event concept? And based on that, you have to set your features list and then go shop, basically. There is a lot of solutions out there, from bigger scale to smaller scale. There are new ones popping out every month, if not every week. Yeah, basically this is the, let's say, the stepstones that you take towards taking the best decision in that moment. So I think it is back to Raquel.
Yes, so after what you said, I guess everyone is curious to know, why did Ecsite choose Crowdcast? So we had to choose a tool that would fit the team. We were quite a small team. We were in lockdown. We had little time on our hands. We had major budget cuts as we couldn't hold our annual conference. We needed an easy to learn tool, reliable and not expensive. We first dreamed of a platform where we could see faces, like hundreds, thousands of faces if possible, a platform that would allow interaction, conversations, really like be what we are normally at the conference. But we soon understood there was no magical tool and we had to make choices. If we couldn't see each other on screen, then we had to choose a tool that could support and harvest the best out of those who will take the spotlight. And at this point, it's also important to mention that we were already busy developing the Ecsite app, our first application aiming at supporting networking among the science engagement community. So it was also important for us not to choose a platform that would compete with the networking opportunities we were trying to create with the app. So that made us exclude some platforms like Hopin, for instance, which allow for one-on-one meetings, but it was a bit too much overlap with what we wanted to do on the app. So if you could show the next slide. So we chose Crowdcast. It's a live streaming platform with a simple and attractive design. It was easy to use and not too expensive. The next slides. Here's how it looks like. So you can see it on the screen. What we loved about it, it allows for a pleasant user experience. So you don't need to download anything to your desktop or your mobile phone. You can customize your event URL, which helps with promotion. You got your Q&A, your voting mechanisms and chat, which Ursula mentioned, they are quite usual, but you can also embed actually in your own website, so people can immediately see the event from there, and that was pretty cool. If you can show the next slides, you can see a screenshot that I took from the Ecsite website where the event is embedded, and you can already see how it looks like, and it creates a nice, exciting feeling. So it's a stable platform with high definition quality, and it very seldom experiences major crashes, and we can actually follow these crashes live, as they are very transparent about any technical issues. So if you can show the next slide. The setup of Crowdcast is very flexible. You can duplicate events, you can limit seats, make some of the events private, we can put on passwords, keep them unlisted. So it was very flexible. The next slide. And finally, it was also quite interesting for us that we could get advanced analytics already in a nice presentation, so we didn't even have to do much. But they were also available for exporting, so that was very cool. Another attractive characteristic of Crowdcast is that we can replay events for as long as we have a plan with Crowdcast, or we can download them in high definition and upload them to YouTube, to our YouTube channel, but you can upload them to other video sharing channels. And this was quite important in these lockdown periods, because we felt like everyone has such different and complicated lives right now. You might be taking care of your kid, you might be doing things in a different schedules. We are international and we are all in a different time zone. We are not all together in the same country at the same time. So this flexibility to replay the event afterwards was really nice. So the next slide. So what was this Ecsite Online? So Ecsite Online was a new set of initiatives and alternatives to keep the science engagement community connected, learning and sharing knowledge throughout the rest of 2020 and beyond. It included weekly themed drop-in exchange sessions and a private LinkedIn forum for Ecsite members. 6 stimulating and topical webinar sessions, mostly harvests from the Ecsite conference program. A full dedicated day of connection, stimulation, and celebration of our network, and a business day designed for those looking for business-related collaborations. I saw some of you already have questions, and we will have a bit of moments on the presentation to answer them before we continue. So I'll wait a little bit. So today we are focusing on large events. So I will talk just about the Ecsite Day and the Business Day. So on the Ecsite Day, when brainstorming its main blocks with the conference program committee, we did it over a Zoom meeting, which was quite strange for us to brainstorm digitally for the first time, when normally we would be in Stavanger, in fact. But it was quite clear that we wanted one string line of events, so like no parallel happenings. We would want to keep one of our keynote speakers, like in the picture here, Nicolas Nova. He had this inspiring talk on design fictions that we thought would still be very interesting to everyone to hear. We would want some sessions with some interactivity. You can put the next slides. And for that, we found it important to ask communities that were very close to us and who each year dedicate a lot of time and energy in organizing thematic spaces like the Game Lab and the Make Ecsite groups. This was like one very important thing for us to do in Ecsite Online, was to keep connected to those that were already close and were super dedicated. And we really thought if we were to capture this family feeling and this family spirit we wanted, and that is so characteristic to us, we had to work close, not just come from our mind, but work together with everyone. So we would want short but inspirational, very strong classic panel sessions. And next slide, of course, have moments for fun and relaxation, like we had this pub quiz and the Ecsite jazz bands. So the next slides. So all of these would be broadcasted in a very top-down approach, pretty much like TV, in fact, but we could count on a few tools to activate the audience. Of course, we had the chat, the Q&A, and the polls, and the Make Ecsite community actually pretty cleverly used Padlets to collect shadow creations from the audience, and with a simple screen share, they could present it back to everyone and comment on everyone's creative attempts. The next slides. And then to give everyone an opportunity to see each other face to face, we use our brand new web app. So the Ecsite app, so for those of you, yeah, there is a picture. So for those of you who don't know, it was actually already in the pipeline since the beginning of the year, and was developed to focus on this #1 need of our community, that is to build meaningful connections. In the app, you find already over 400 completed profiles, and yeah, over 1,200 users who've been there. These are all science engagement professionals, and in this app, users can navigate the program of the Ecsite conference, of the Ecsite online day and business day, and the webinars, and access the events even directly from there. So if you show the next slide, more excitingly, this app has a new feature which you won't find in any other app in the SciComm community. It's the meetups, and anyone with a profile in the Ecsite app can create or join an existing meetup. When we first designed it, and this is something that we're gonna keep beyond Ecsite Online for sure, because the idea was to already support network even in physical happenings, but we found it like really timely that we could use the app to encourage people to meet face to face when all our program was sort of top down. So we encourage everyone to, during the breaks, use the app, and we received pretty good feedback on how some of the meetups went. So that's pretty good. If you can show the next slide. Yes, finally for the Ecsite Business Day. So that was yet another day we organized 1 week later. this we followed a completely different approach. So we first kept our antennas wide open and also tried to contact a lot of, if not most of our partners to understand if there was a need to support businesses. And we understood that there was, but not simply by hosting a virtual fair, which I have to admit was our very first almost instinct idea, since we organize this business bistro each year, and there's pretty cool platforms to do these virtual fairs, like there's this vFair, but we saw some other ones which allow for virtual business bistros, in fact. But we thought like, and from what we heard, it's not exactly what people were looking for. It's a lot of work and it's not quite the same. So we opt to use this platform, which we were already getting comfortable with, and we gave the floor to our members and partners to have the conversations they wanted to. And this day was then shaped by those who answered the call we launched early in the spring. If we set up an online stage, who would take it to showcase great ideas, projects, or products to the science engagement community. So over 20 organizations and companies took up this opportunity and purchased one of our online packages. So, and that's how this day was actually shaped. So I feel like I talked a lot, so maybe I will stop, breathe, and I will answer any questions you will have for sure. At this moment, let's take a bit of a break.
Thank you, Raquel. Maybe we can even stop the screen share so people can see our faces and get a break from slides as well. So it's the moment to drop your questions in the chat. And there's already one, which I think is for you, Raquel. Did your participants fill in a recording consent form, and also for future replays and use of image or video?
So no, but we did it for those who had a child on screen. So most of them were adults and they knew what they were going for. Of course, we told everyone in the speakers brief we shared that they would be live on screen, of course, but also during replays, and that they would stay on our websites. But so we did have a consent form for one of the children who had to show on screen. Maybe one thing we should emphasize again is that no one in the audience was visible through the platform that we use, Crowdcast, only speakers, so sort of active contributors to the day could be seen on camera. Let's see. Ursula, could you elaborate on your comment that video doesn't work, I guess video via screen share?
So screen share is basically the platform recording the screen, processing it and feeding it back to the attendees. And this is a very heavy process, just data-wise. So to do it efficiently so that the quality of the video stays good, you should have either a direct feed through OBS, Open Broadcasting service, or that the platform has a different door to enter the video into it, if you understand what I mean. So some of the platforms like ClickMeeting, you can give a link to a YouTube video and then they would process it directly from YouTube. But the idea that you will play video on your screen and share video via screen share, it doesn't work. The quality drop is very big. And yeah, so I hope I answered the question.
Okay, are there any more questions at this stage? Okay, can we say, I think it's for you, Raquel, again, something about the decision not to do parallel sessions?
So this decision actually came from the Ecsite boards, and I'm glad it did. It was one of the very first ones, but the idea was not to overwhelm anyone. I mean, we knew people had a lot on their minds and everyone is discovering new platforms and new things, and it was too much to have to make choices at that moment. Now that I know a little bit more of Crowdcast, I'm really glad we didn't go for it. It's while you're running one session, and especially if it's a full day event, you're at the same time already preparing other speakers who are coming to the next session. And if you have to do this, several times for several sessions. You will need a huge team. It's going to be incredibly much work. Plus, it's for less audience because then you're also splitting everyone else. There would be its advantages, but then for sure for a very big team, and it would be way more complex for sure. So I'm glad we went for just one string of events. Yeah.
Thank you. Ursula, there's a follow-up question on sharing videos. Someone who saw the Ecsite Day saying, hey, but you did show pre-recorded videos. So maybe you can explain how we did it?
Yes, so Crowdcast does support streaming a second source video. So what we did, we created a next session and we streamed the video into the session through OBS. So basically we pulled all the audience from the live session into the streaming, like a video session, played them the video and then put them back. Now the challenge with this is that there is a 20 to 40 second delay in how these things play. And also this delay is not the same everywhere in the world, but it could be 20 seconds here, but 40 seconds somewhere else. So we had to come up with some kind of, let's say, buffer zones, creative fillers that the audience did not feel this as a waiting moments, or that they would like get cut off too soon. Yeah, so our Crowdcast enables a high quality streaming video, which is great. Yeah, so you can do it, but it requires yeah, extra attention.
Maybe I should say it requires someone with at least basic video editing skills, because you need to have a sort of intro and outro of any video you're showing to make sure that it doesn't start straight away. Otherwise, those participants who are a bit late, a bit behind because of the delay, will miss some of the videos. So in this case, Ursula did some post-production on videos that we already had received to make sure that they would be best adapted for showing on the day. Okay, so some more questions are coming. There's one saying, was Crowdcast pricing determined by how many hours, days, participants, locations? What factors determine the pricing? And did they offer tech support? Raquel, I guess it's for you.
Yeah, maybe I'll drop here on the chat the link to their prices. They have several categories, and we chose the most expensive, which were still $139 a month, which compared to other platforms is really not so much. And these would allow what we needed, since we didn't know what to expect in terms of attendance of live attendees. So we opt for something that's, no matter what, we would always welcome everyone. And this allowed for quite a lot of broadcasting hours a month, so over 40. And so you can check it here on their link. Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna take two more technical questions, and then I can see the questions about the future, and those we will answer later. So a technical question is, was there a possibility either in Crowdcast or through the app to have one-to-one messaging or contacts?
Should I answer?
Yeah.
Okay. So through Crowdcast, not. So you can only chat to everyone who's there. Through the app, you always have to, you could, because you basically can contact anyone who's on the app and email them directly. So you can simply send them an email, and that would be the easiest. You could as well create a meetup, but since it's too one-on-one, is maybe useless. But we didn't want to create new ways to communicate, and the app was not supposed to be a chat place. So we just wanted to use the mechanisms that everyone is already using. So a simple email would do, or then create a little group that could meet like we are doing now. So yeah, through the app you can do just by email.
Okay, and there's another technical one about co-hosting. So maybe you can explain how different people can use the sort of admin account, Raquel?
Yeah, so that is like the most annoying thing on Crowdcast, and that's one that they know, and they are taking care of it. So basically, there's only one only one account is the host, so there's normally just one host. But luckily, and our salvation in a way, is that the same account can access and be host from different devices, and there's no limits that we at least could foresee. Like, we tested from a lot of devices, so we were all under the Ecsite host accounts from different devices, and we all had different host powers. Of course, we did this very carefully, and we knew very well who had these hosts accounts. So like for the webinars, we gave them, I see Anna, she was the very first to experience it, being the host in the first Ecsite online webinar. So she had access to the Ecsite accounts, and she, not you, it's true, Amparo had, yes, Amparo had, so she could have some of the admin features, while Anna, indeed, she was the anchor, so she came from her own account. It works okay, but the disadvantage is that only one camera can be on at a time, so only only one device can show their camera. And for us, it was very important. I will explain later that one of us would have the camera that would be the one speaking with the speakers, and the other ones would always be, not using camera, unfortunately, but we couldn't do it. So they know, so I know they're working on it, and that will be pretty cool, but for now, not.
Okay. So at this point, I suggest we start our presentation again. There are questions about hybrid event, about what makes successful sort of informal networking possible, and also lessons learned. And those, I think, we will answer as part of the next round of presentation. So let me just share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so how did we plan this for our audience? So when I got on board, I got the title of director, and so I thought, okay, because I'm always like that, let's start with the audience experience. So the program committee of the physical conference had already done a really good job in identifying in the existing program what could potentially be reused online. But they were, let's say, loose blocks, and there was really a flow needed, a glue, to make sure that this would be a nice experience. We planned it thinking of those who would stay from morning to afternoon. Of course, people were free to drop in and out to only follow a little while, but you get very fast, very tired online. So we knew that even for those only staying maybe an hour, they needed a variation of experience. And so what you can see on the slide right now on the top is the fact that we classified the content blocks that we had into different categories, thinking of some that would mostly bring emotions, some that were pure intellectual nurture and rather passive, like watching a panel session, some that were more interactive, that you can see in the blue post-it notes here, and then in orange you can see breaks and networking. And this is an early draft of the program. We played with it quite a little bit to make sure that there was a nice variation throughout the day. And at the bottom of the slide, you can see in pictures two very different moments of the day. One is a classic panel with some serious thoughts. And the second one is outcomes of a live tinkering at home session that we planned in the middle of the day to try and wake people up and make them active. Just a second. Okay, so the other thing that I always ask is, what's the story you're telling, whatever the medium you're using? And so here, with the Ecsite Day, we're really telling the story of a community, a family who normally gets together, physically together, and who this year couldn't, but still wanted some sort of togetherness feeling. And this is the emotion that we tried to recreate. And the choice we made was to have a duo of anchors who were not professionals, but part of the community. A lot of people knew them already and who took on this challenge of, in the end, sort of writing a little theater play with me. And so we did a little script for them, and they were present at the start and at the end of every session. We used them to do all of the technical onboarding, to facilitate the interaction with the audience, and to give a light-hearted, playful tone to it, because this is what the Ecsite community is about. I guess if it was another event, you might use the anchor to reflect who the community is that you're trying to bring together in your event. And so here you can see that Dorothée on the right, who's an exhibition developer or curator, has a lot of interesting science-related objects at her home. So during the day, the table in front of her was filling up with this sort of cabinet of curiosity of different objects. And she also used them for demonstrations and to, as a theatrical way, to weave in these difficult transitions that Ursula was talking about earlier. So we knew that sometimes we had 20 seconds where some of our audience was ready to watch a video, but some wasn't. And so we needed to fill the time with non-verbal stuff. And so for instance, here you can see her demonstrate this apple peeling tool. And at the bottom, you can see the sort of culmination of this togetherness moment, a sort of Eurovision meets the Ecsite community type moments where people who had been warned in advance agreed that they would come on screen and share their national drink and have a cheer with the two anchors. So in the end, what we did was almost an online theater play, and here on screen you can see some of the ugly backstage documents that we needed to make it work, so it's a lot of work. We had some grids, we had a script for the anchors. At the bottom you can see 2 slides from a storyboard that counted hundreds of slides, where basically almost frame by frame we decided who would be shown big at a certain moment in the presentation, who would appear small at the bottom of the screen, and we also needed it a lot for the person doing the live stage management, because you constantly have to look for the next speaker, make sure you're ready for the next stage. So it was a very resource-consuming step, but it was a very useful tool. One thing, prepping speakers, you cannot overdo it. I think it was you, Ursula, who used the analogy that everyone, knows how to speak in a physical room. They know where to find the corridor, where the room is where they're going to speak. They know how to identify the right door. They know how a handle works. They know how a microphone works. And they are very at ease with doing some chit chat with their audience before it shows up. And if you translate that online, it's as if you need to learn again how to open a door, what a handle looks like and how to operate it. And it's not because you know Zoom that you know Crowdcast, for instance. And we knew that part of the success of the event would really be linked to how well speakers understood the subtleties of the platform. And we also knew that a lot of the bugs we might have was probably on the speakers' end, things like losing connection, not having the right setup, not being on cable with their internet. And so we invested a lot of time and energy in prepping people. So you can see on the slide the different moments that speakers were in touch with us, and it's a lot of those. And you can see, for instance, that we had a technical rehearsal, all the transitions, learning how to share your screen, etc. And also a dress rehearsal, where we told everyone, right, this one is like the actual day. We're going to record it, and if anything goes bad, we're actually going to show the recording of that dress rehearsal, so you need to be super ready, and it worked really well. It made sure that when we were live 2 days later, all the mistakes had been made already, and we had a really good result. What you can see at the bottom there as well is one of the channels of communications that we use with the speakers. We created WhatsApp groups for each session at dress rehearsal stage, and kept them a little longer after the live events. And this was a really important channel to remind people of the fact that they were live in half an hour, and also during the session to communicate discrete things. It's like whispering, kind of saying things like, I don't know, there's a massive fly behind you, or unmute yourself, we can't hear you, or you're running late, we're going to have to cut you in 3 minutes. So this was a really important tool. And I think I'm done with my part. I will hand back to Raquel, who will present the Backstage team to you.
So Indeed, here I'm using the business day as an example. So some of the roles of the Backstage team are quite obvious. So in this case, Helen and myself were the anchors, and Julie, again, the director. But what you might not know is that we had a dedicated person to manage live stage, whose role was to invite people on screen, toggle cameras and microphones, launch balls, call for action buttons. It's really like, yeah, really like on TV, deciding what do you see on Crowdcasts. So that was the live stage. We also had a person fully dedicated to handle the green room. So this is, we already mentioned it briefly, so it's a room exclusive for speakers where we can test all of their technical needs, normally around 20 minutes ahead of the session going live. So this green room was like really, really important. We could take care of making sure the cameras were good. Simple things as your screen is not really sharp, what's happening, and then you just clean the camera and the camera was a little bit dirty, but all kinds of stuff like that. You can really get, and it's also a nice place, and we had the perfect person to do it, to really like build up the enthusiasm, but also getting calm for it, and get excited about the session coming live. So we also had this person who was handling the WhatsApp, like what Julie mentioned, also super important role, getting everyone ready several, like even an hour ahead, telling them like, stretch, it's the time is coming, go change your clothes, and things like that. So that's also creating excitement. It's really good. And then of course some people would not find their session, or if there would be, luckily it never really happened too much, but if there would be like a big problem, of course it would also be the channel where we would get to hear things. So we had another person handling the live chats. So if people were commenting something, could help them there, drop some links, helping anyone with tech issues, and being the backup if the speakers couldn't for some reason share their presentations. And finally, we also had a backup for the anchors themselves. This was Andrew for both days actually, and Andrew had followed some of the rehearsals. He was ready, he was in the right place, he had read the anchor script, and he could jump in case something would happen. And this really took a lot of stress out of our shoulders. So on the Ecsite day, because we had mixed pre-recorded videos with live streaming, we also needed an extra role, that in that case was Ursula that day. So this was the video studio manager, and maybe Ursula, I'll pass it on to you because you will know it even better.
Yeah, so basically you have to, okay, maybe, yeah, this was my setup. Basically, I can tell you that when you're preparing your backup, and you should prepare backup, and we discussed before the event really a lot about backups, that human factor is always the fail. And with my case, everything that it could fail failed. Like with the first rehearsal, I stayed without internet because last minute I thought like, oh, I'm gonna restart my modem, and then it didn't work anymore. And the second time is my main machine went into a weird state for an hour. So it is important that you do not rely on one system, that you have at least two systems for the important roles, and that for the important roles, such as an anchor, you also have a person who's gonna back it up in case something goes really really wrong. And this makes it allows it for things to run smooth. For the video itself, so what I said is I had to switch between two softwares, which one was OBS Studio and the other one was Crowdcast, and do it in timely. So this was also why I needed to have two systems, to be checking the control room on the LAN connection, and have a control system on a Wi-Fi that I would see more or less some kind of a medium delay that was going on. What else? I mean, you basically need 3 audio channels if you want to do it we had with on WhatsApp with Julie. I think what makes this more challenging is that if you have the production team distributed, you add one step extra to the performance. So this is also something to take into account. And really, it is more like TV making than anything else. And I think this is also a little bit ties in maybe what it's going to be the future of this hybrid events, is that some of these learnings, I think communities and organizations will take forward, and the good parts will continue to exist, I am pretty sure. So.
Okay, maybe I will take the word to describe this picture, which was the same setup, but on the director's side. I won't go into all the details, but basically I had Ursula in one ear to agree with her on what was showing on screen at the moment, potentially make sort of on-the-fly decisions if we thought that suddenly, it would look nicer if this or that was in focus. I was listening to Crowdcast with one ear, and then luckily the green room manager was actually in the same location. So I could shout session after session, okay, are you ready? Go live! I think it would have been crazy if we hadn't shared the same location with at least some of the technical team. I think it's time to wrap up and say what we learned. We can stay a bit longer for questions after that, but I'm conscious of the fact that some of you might need to run. So the first learning, and I think this is not just about online conferences, it's digital. Everything takes time. It takes a lot of prep. You can improvise less. The skill sets in all of your collaborators is building these days, but still it's slower. So there's still a learning curve for everyone. And the second lesson is that it's worth investing time in understanding why we want to host an online event and use this knowledge to design a well-paced experience. We were broadcasting, we're doing almost live TV, so Crowdcast was the choice, but maybe if what you want to do is interaction and community building, then you should use Zoom and hack it together with another platform. Maybe Ursula, next learnings are for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so mixing different types of content adds to complexity. So make a good evaluation whether this is important from the content perspective. I think the biggest learning is that the content is really the most important thing is content. And if your content is not going to be engaging, then you can do nothing to improve it. And I think what Ecsite decided to do is onboard a lot of speakers, but that made the event extremely interesting. People were really liking to see, but it added a lot to the complexity of organization. I think we had over 70 people appear on screen, and it would be 10 times easier if we would have only 5 keynotes and 2 anchors. And also, one learning was we had a Zoom help desk prepared that basically nobody needed help. So that was a bit of a redundant. And back to Raquel.
Yeah, and finally, togetherness is possible, even if it's a rather unidirectional platform. The important thing was to work with everyone and not just try to do something alone. Like we had so many people mobilized and interested to make this thing happen. We contact the right people who already knew us, and I think it was a fantastic team building opportunity, and the day itself, you could really feel it. So it is possible, you just need to get the right people involved. And then, of course, excellent speakers preparation makes all these complex plan Bs unnecessary. We had dress rehearsals that were recorded and all these videos downloaded and ready to share. But it's, if everyone is ready and already on board and knows the right tools and has experimented so many times, it's not really necessary. And it's much better to give the time to this excellent prep. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So you have our contact details on the screen right now, and we can stay and answer some more questions if anyone has to leave now. Thanks a lot for coming today. So if I go back to some of the questions, I'm actually going to take one that was asking us how did we do this networking game lab session? So we should emphasize that it was possible to have such a diversified program with a lot of interactive moments because there is a pre-existing thriving Ecsite community that has a lot of subgroups with people who would normally in a physical Ecsite conference already organize a lot of super interactive, participatory, creative workshops. And so for the two more interactive moments of the day, we could rely on two pre-existing communities, one that brings together gamers who use games as a science engagement tool, and another one that brings together makers and tinkerers who use these tools as a kind of science engagement avenue as well. And these two pre-mobilized groups got a tour of Crowdcast, understood what was possible there, and then hacked it to do two super nice interactive sessions. And actually it's the same for the pub quiz that we had at the end of the day. This was a format that we had already had in a physical Ecsite conference. And then the people behind it decided to do an online version of it. And maybe about networking, Raquel, do you want to add a little bit more about how this Ecsite networking app was used during the online day?
Yes, so basically we were trying to recreate a little bit of the coffee break experience at the Ecsite conference where everyone can sort of get together. We already had in our mind for a while to allow for more thematic meetups where people could also at the conference, there's just so many people. It's also hard to find those that maybe could share some cool ideas with you. So these meetups, which were then organized during the 2 coffee breaks of the event, plus in the lunch break, we actually didn't prepare any of them. We just gave the tool with the Ecsite app. Anyone with a profile can create a meetup, and then anyone can also join. You can browse. At the moment now, with the event over, there's only our meetup there, but the idea is that anyone can create meetups at any time. You can browse them. There's a title, there's a little description, and once you decide to join, you also get the link to join via any of the platforms that the initiator chooses to use. We chose Zoom, but it could be a Hangouts or could be a WhatsApp chat, could be anything. So what's for the Ecsite day, it was pretty much bottom up, but we did nudge a few people, and each time I would talk with people. I'm so proud of the Ecsite app. I would always tell them, like, there's this meetup app, and just use it and create some communities. And of course, I think the Make Ecsite created at least 2 or 3 meetups. The equity group at a meetup that was as large as over 40 people, I think, during the Ecsite day. So it went really well. So the idea was Crowdcast doesn't allow people to talk with each other. It's very top down. So these would be the moments where you could network and would be using the tool that we developed for networking. That was the idea.
Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that it becomes a bit more informal. Are there any new questions that we haven't answered yet?
We have one from Mark. He asks, how much in advance did Ecsite begin planning this event? Well, since March, since the mid-March, since the pandemic. Yeah, so we decided that we couldn't hold the conference, and our brains started working well while being at home as well, like what could we do? And the Ecsite board had a lot of meetings, the Ecsite conference program committee too. We were all like really trying to imagine how could this be meaningful to the network and what could we really organize. And so everything went pretty last minute. And to be honest, just because like Julie and Ursula were on board with just so much of their time, and the Ecsite team also so much of their time, and everyone, like the anchors, spent days, if not maybe a full week, trying to prepare their part. So it was really like a lot of work from very dedicated people, which made the experience amazing and so tiring. But yeah, so that was since mid-May, mid-March. Yeah, mid-March that we started. Yeah, but the app we started a little bit before. We really wanted to have an Ecsite app. So since the beginning of the year in February, so before the pandemic really hit Europe, we were in Ljubljana at Ursula's place, and we were discussing how the app was going to support the Ecsite conference in Ljubljana. So yeah, that was February.
We have another question that I think the three of us could answer, and I will start, is what would we have done differently? So I stressed everyone with plan Bs, because you know that online things can go wrong. You're always thinking, okay, what would happen if this goes wrong? And what happens if this goes wrong? And so, yeah, poor Raquel and Ursula heard me say plan B 1,000 times. And I think I overdid it slightly. And so one thing we learned is that actually Crowdcast is super stable. So don't anticipate crashes from, I hope, you know, you won't have the only terrible problem with Crowdcast if you end up using it. But so plan Bs, in case the platform broke down, were unnecessary. And then, as I said earlier, the fact that we had prepped our speakers so well that we had checked with them at least 5 times, okay, will you be on cable on the day? And what browser will you be in? And, you know, have you locked your dog right now because we don't want to hear your dog bark in an hour? Meant that we didn't have terrible situations where suddenly a speaker isn't there, or where they don't know how to operate their microphone. And so that's made some of the plan Bs that we had spent quite a bit of energy planning unnecessary. So as we said earlier, we had recorded the dress rehearsals, and Ursula had edited those down to each speaker's presentation, thinking, okay, if one speaker we cannot get at all, at least we can launch their video. And honestly, I wouldn't do that again. That's also because we had good anchors ready to handle unforeseen circumstances if needed, who could have done 5 minutes of, okay, let's stall and see what we can do while they're solving the problem backstage. What about you, Ursula? What would you have done differently?
I think I wouldn't restart my computer. I think, you know, when something so new starts to happen, you have to go with the flow and not stress too much. Yeah, I think when we got comfortable being live, then stress is less. But I wouldn't do much different. I think it was good.
And you, Raquel?
So this is a painful one for me to say, but I guess I would have not done the Ecsite Day because the team and the budget just didn't allow for it. And as a very inexperienced manager, I thought we could do it all. But yeah, it was really like way over our possibilities. And in the end, it was just amazing. And it was, I saw someone asking if we thought it was worth it, and it totally was. But if I knew what I know now and how much digital takes time, how much preparation, how much it costs, I know, and I know like also Julie also knows how much it takes now. Probably our prices would have been double or triple, so we could not afford it. So it was like a crazy adventure, but it really was worth it. Yeah.
So you would or would you not do it?
No, like if no, I don't. I think the team could have afford the webinars and the Ecsite Business Day for sure, but the Ecsite Day was really like this crazy adventure.
Yeah, I think certain simplifications in the sense of programming, you know, would have saved some nerves, probably also.
It's really nice.
We're having quite a few questions about hybrid events, asking if Ecsite would do them. And I think I'm also, everyone says hybrid these days, and I think we are probably imagining very different things. I've heard people say, oh, you could have sort of regional conferences that would all happen at the same time, so that you still have a sort of togetherness feeling, and then some content would be streamed from a centralized location, and then you would do some adaptations. There are other ideas where most attendees meet, well, all attendees who are physically participating meet in one place, and then you decide to broadcast some of the content out to people who would only be following digitally. I think it's exciting, and it's going to develop quite a lot in the next few months. So Raquel, what do you think? Has Ecsite got any idea about hybridity in the future? Is it too soon?
We don't really have an idea now. We know that this Ecsite Day, you could feel what you felt because we were all online. We were all experiencing more or less the same. We were together on the same platform, seeing the same things. And it was an experience that was really designed for being online. So if, of course, we could broadcast our keynote speakers when they're live, but you're not going to feel the same. It's not, then it's like a TED Talk perhaps, but it's not really the same. So this is something we're discussing with the program committee. It's probably not something we want to do at the national level, that we would create smaller conference, because then we are also getting in the shoes of the national networks, and that's also not the idea. So yeah, I think for now we're really going to go for physical conference in Stavanger, if at all possible, and then just evaluate how things evolve and also how platforms evolve. And I think for now, everything I hear about hybrid events is really not for passing on what Ecsite really wants to do, all these network and being together and yeah, and sharing. If you see our sessions now, it was nice, but it was also very top down. Sessions at the Ecsite conference are participative, they are interactive, there are all these very different formats. So for now, it's very hard to think of a hybrid approach.
What about you, Ursula? Do you have any thoughts on what hybridity might mean?
Yeah, I think definitely it will not replace the live component of it, but I think it will expand the reach. And I don't know whether this is going to happen through getting smaller local events. And I'm not talking about Ecsite, but in general, this type of large events. But for me, professionally, it's been amazing this last couple of months, because I could participate in so many events I would never be able to go to. So I think it will contribute a lot to the knowledge share in general. And yeah, I think we will discover ways where this is just an enhancement and expanding the reach of the live event. But it's not obviously just broadcasting what's happening on stage, right? Because this is what we could have done before as well. So I have high hopes.
Great. Okay, I think it's probably time to wrap up and let you go to your other meetings today. Thanks a lot for coming. It was super nice for us to share what we had learned, because we know that everyone is going through similar cycles, and this is a fast collective learning curve. So hopefully one conference can learn from the previous one. And I'm sure that when we reconsider in 5 years, we'll smile, because we'll be like, oh, those were the days where we were taking all this conference business online. And yet whatever happens in 5 years, I'm sure it will stay as a transition moment in our memories. Thanks a lot to everyone. Those who want to wave goodbye, we could have a little goodbye waving ritual. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Lovely.
Bye.